Welcome to Paranormal M, where the boundary between reality and the supernatural blurs. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a spine-chilling story. Enjoy the ride into the unknown. Visits from family. A lot of relatives that have passed away have been seen time and time again. Either they're seen, or they do something to let us know that they're there. My aunt, who was a spoiled brat at the time, this happened when she was a teen, got the hell scared out of her by her grandparents who visited her after they passed. Her grandpa sat in her bed with her. That was while her grandmother threw a picture. She began to behave and she never saw them again. My Uncle Eddie was the first. He passed away from a gunshot wound in the Marines. It was murder, not in the line of duty, and no one ever knew what happened. Even now. I never met him because he died in 1994. I was born in 97. But my mom told me all about it. The day of his funeral, it both snowed and rained in the same day. She said it was pretty surreal. That alone wasn't what makes us think that he visited. My mom thought that the night the funeral ended, she had a dream. She saw who did it, what car he drove, and where he lived. She said it was like Eddie was telling her what happened involving his death. After he died, his picture was placed in a porcelain picture frame with a music box in the back of it. It played "The Wind Beneath My Wings," a song that played at his funeral. My experiences start with that. I never knew Eddie, but my mom told me about him, and, well, when I was little, I liked that music box. It held meaning. Well, that thing would play at random times. It was up on a high shelf, so it wouldn't be knocked down easily. My grandfather was the only one tall enough to reach it. So that way, no one else could really reach it and, to turn it on randomly. Not only that, my grandmother told me that she'd seen him around the house, even at the cemetery near his grave. My little cousin Jay, which isn't his real name, is much younger than me. He looks exactly like Eddie with bright red hair, blue eyes, and a lot of freckles. He never met Eddie either. His older brother had. My aunt put him to bed one night, and while later before she went to bed, she heard Jay laughing in his room, like he was playing with someone. She went in and he was sitting in the room in the dark in his bed. He was facing his closet and laughing. Sonia turns on the light and goes over to him and asks him what he's doing. He suddenly just turns over to her and grabbed her arm. Looking into the eyes, he smiled and said, "I'm Googie." Googie was the nickname my mom gave Eddie when they were little. She couldn't say good boy to him properly and instead would just say Googie. I didn't know about this and had never met Eddie, and, well, Jay's much younger than me, so he definitely shouldn't have known about it. My aunt told me that she then told him to go to bed and left as quickly as possible to tell her husband, which is my uncle. Another night she heard him say, "Go away, Googie, I have to go to sleep." She told me that she never told Jay about Eddie's nickname, so that combined with how similar he looks to Eddie, I'm honestly convinced that Jay has some close connection with Eddie that we can't explain. The next spirit is actually my mother. She went on a downhill spiral when I was younger, got into prescription drugs. I was taken away from her and sent to live with my dad after I tried to get my mom help. I saw her twice before she passed away. She went to her friend or supplier's house, passed away in the middle of the night. My grandmother and I didn't allow an autopsy. I was 14 and I couldn't imagine my mother getting cut up by the doctors. The night I found out she died, I stayed with my grandma. I had a dream that I was walking down a long white staircase that led to a hallway. When I got to the bottom step, I saw my mom walking with another figure that wasn't clear. I tried to catch up, but I couldn't, and then I just woke up. My grandma then told me that I'd been crying in my sleep. I had a few dreams where my mom would approach me and talk with me. She even asked me once, "Why didn't you tell them the courts, that you wanted to stay with me. The last time I really had an encounter with my mom was one time I was staying at my aunt's house. My aunt and uncle were in their bedroom. My cousins and their girlfriend were in their rooms, and Jay was asleep in his room. I was on the couch and in the living room that, sort of faces the kitchen. And in the kitchen, there's a bright nightlight that can only be turned on manually. It's not motion sensor. I was trying to sleep and I see the light go on. I can't sleep, so I decide to see who's up. I walk in and nobody's there. I get freaked out, get back on the couch, curl up under the blankets. For no reason, I don't really know, I just begin to talk. Started talking to my mom, talking about school and my hobbies, my friends, and when I mentioned my dad, the lights went out. I'm terrified of the dark, and she knew that. I apologized and said I wouldn't bring him up again. A couple of minutes later, the light came back on. Began to talk to her again until I got tired. Then I said goodnight, closed my eyes. A few minutes later, I heard the click of the light, and it didn't come back on for the rest of the night. I'm convinced it was her. The last spirit is my grandma, who died a year after my mom. She died after fighting a liver disease for years. She died with everyone around her. She told us all that she wanted us to do with our lives before falling asleep for a few days. She waited until everybody was around her before she passed away. We held her hands. I kept her hands on my leg and kissed her and told her goodbye, and a few seconds later she stopped breathing and she was gone. That alone was an impacting experience. The only experience I know of, or after her passing, was at a birthday party for a relative. My cousin Jay saw my grandma and her late sister-in-law sitting on the couch watching the guests. According to him, she beckoned Jay over and Jay gave her a hug. He said he could actually feel her, feel warmth coming from her. That's the last I know of with the experiences in the family. I don't know why, but it seems that Jay's the most connection to the spirits. I'm the only one who's seen my mom, and almost all of us have seen, at least another relative, mostly Eddie. Now, my other aunt, Anne, and her husband, Uncle Dave, they're a huge family who live in the trailer next to mine. They've started to see weird things going on. It started when my cousin Laura became pregnant. Anne had a different mother from my grandmother, who died in a fire when she was younger. Her name was Marlene. Laura decided to name her baby girl after Anne's mother. The baby's name is Ava Marlene. From the beginning, weird things happened. The picture of Marlene flew off the wall. The TV's been turning on and off, along with the lights and even flashlights around the house. The scariest incident was when my aunt saw a figure by the door and she began to scream. She was terrified. She also said she was half asleep when that happened, so I don't really know how real it was. I haven't seen anything since my mom visited me, but I know weird activity is still happening. I suppose it's just our relatives telling us that they're watching over us. Run, run. This is about my little niece. They're named Ava. She's actually my second cousin, but her mother, my cousin, told me that I could be her aunt. That's how close we are. Recently, both Ava's mother and grandmother, and from my last story, told me that Ava apparently has an imaginary friend that she's been waking up at night to see, and also to play with. Her mother's told me that she also has been feeling watched in the house. Apparently, an elderly woman has lived there before them passed away, so I think it's her playing with Ava. Well, tonight I was watching Ava while her grandmother was inside for a few minutes, and Ava's wearing footy pajamas and no shoes, so I've been carrying her around to put her in her seat. That's when she wants to sit down so she doesn't hurt her feet. She's 2 years old and doesn't really like being held anymore, since she likes moving around on her own. I asked about her imaginary friend because I was curious, and for a 2-year-old she was talking clearly, giving me yes or no answers. I asked if she had an imaginary friend. She said yes. She didn't answer anymore until I asked if her friend was here. She said no, so no big deal. I was just watching the fire. That was until she came up to me and moved to sit on my lap and snuggle. Remember, she doesn't like being held anymore. She then pointed to the large lawn in front of us and said, "What's that?" I didn't see anything, so I said, "I don't know, I don't see anything." She actually looked at me like I was crazy. She looked around and would point in random directions and say the same thing until she got really startled, like something was in her face and pulled my sleeve. So she was hiding her face in my arm. She began to panic. I heard the cows next door moaning in distress. I could relate. She began to cry and wanted her grandma. She said, "Ma," for grandma. He picked her up to take her inside. My house and her grandmother's house are next door to each other, with sort of a fire pit in the middle. We live in the country surrounded by woods, so I got about halfway across the yard to get her to her grandmother's when she begins to panic in my arms and yells, "Run, run!" She doesn't stop until I begin to run. I was getting freaked out, but sue me. I slowed down to get to the porch steps safely. She yells it again. She actually reminded me to run when I slowed down. I didn't stop until we got inside. She just ran to her grandmother and I explained what happened. Made my aunt walk me back home. I was kind of too freaked out to go out alone. Was it just a kid's overactive imagination that managed to freak me out, or do you think she actually saw something bad and warned me to run? What do you guys think? I'm at a loss here. My dad's strange encounter in the hospital. I live in Madagascar, that island on the east of Africa. A lot of people here still believe in magic, sorcery, and all that stuff, despite being a big Christian country. My dad died in 2002. He lived and experienced a lot of things in his life. He was a Christian and didn't believe in witchcraft and magic stuff, although he experienced a very strange thing back in the 80s. My mom and an aunt did confirm a story. In 1985, before I was even born, my dad caught pneumonia, was rushed to the hospital. My mom and an auntie were there to look for him, buying medics and stuff. My uncle, that aunt's husband, knew things about black magic and traditional maligacy. Witchcraft. When he once visited my dad on the 4th or 5th day in the hospital, he told him something. Gave him a piece of ginger and asked him to keep it in his hand for the next 2 days. Dad asked why, and my uncle told him that on the next 2 days, an evil person who wanted to hurt him, or even worse, he would come to visit him in his hospital room. Holding that piece of ginger will keep the evil person away. My dad didn't believe a single word of it, but my mom insisted to do it. She knew my uncle was really serious about it. So my dad kept the ginger in his hand for 2 days. The very next day, while he and my mom were at the room, somebody knocked on the door. My mom opened it, and one of my dad's coworkers and friend was there with some flowers. My mom told him to enter, but the guy stayed right there, and then said that finally won't enter the room. My dad saw him and told him to enter, but he was standing in the threshold not moving. Then he just turned back and went away quickly without even saying goodbye. Later, when my dad was back to work, his coworker and friend was working with him anymore, and my dad never saw him again. The experience that made me believe in real paranormal shit. This story happened in 2001. I was 14 at the time. I live in Madagascar, and like my previous post here, I'd like to tell you a lot of strange things happens in everyday life here. One day, the mother of my friend lost her expensive handbag with valuables also in it. She really loved that handbag. It was a gift. She desperately wanted to find it. So one person told her that somewhere an old lady could find everything you've lost. She had some kind of supernatural sense to find everything, especially when stolen. So my friend, his mom, and me went to this lady. Her house was like 10 kilometers from my friend's house. None of us have ever seen this old woman. My friend and I stayed in the car while his mom went inside the lady's house. When she came back, she told us that the lady gave her an exact description of where the bag was. She said, "You lost your bag at home. The day you lost it, there were 3 people in the house. A young kid, an older kid, and you, the mom. The younger kid stole the bag. Close to your house, there's a house where an old man lives. The kid often stays in that house. There's a dog in this property. The bag is inside the dog's house." The old lady even gave physical descriptions of my friend and his young cousin who were in their house the day the bag disappeared. The house she was talking about was the house of the kid's grandfather. We went directly to that house immediately after seeing the lady. The bag was where she said it was. It was fucking insane. The bag was right in the dog's house. There was everything in it except the money. And like the lady said, it was pretty believable. Well, unbelievable. That lady was living 10 kilometers away from that neighborhood. Neither my friend, his mom, or me had ever heard about her. It was a very old lady who could barely walk, so it was impossible for her to know the face of my friend and his cousin, and even what happened that day. His cousin was like 10 or 11 years old, and neither him or his family could have known the existence of that woman. I don't know how that lady could know all that stuff. When we were at that lady's house, there was a goddamn queue to see her. There was like 15 people waiting to see her and ask her for things that were lost. Funny thing is that you didn't even ask money for it. You give what you want. People, some of them at least, give money, others gifts, and others nothing. It was the most insane and unexplainable thing I've ever experienced. I think we'd all enjoy a little bit of her. Induced possession. Here in Madagascar, we have a tradition called tromba. You can Google it. It's a possession provoked. It's not a possession by demons or the devil. The person is possessed by another person who died previously. People have practiced often this ritual to ask questions to their ancestors or a person who died recently, and I was one day in 2012 invited to one of my tromba. My mom spent her childhood in the west coast of Madagascar, where people practice tromba very often. She witnessed a lot of them in their early life. So one day when we were on holidays in the west coast, she asked us if we'd like to see a tromba. At first I was afraid, but finally my brother and 2 cousins followed my mom to watch one. The ritual is simple. The sorcerer chose one person to be the host, and then he summoned the spirit to enter this host, and a conversation can begin. This time the tromba happened in a remote village. There wasn't even electricity in the small town. The chosen host was an old lady, a very, very old one, maybe in her 70s. After the summoning, the old lady started to have convulsions like an epilepsy crisis. Then everything stops. So she started to smoke cigarettes, a ton of cigarettes. She was smoking like 3 cigarettes at the same time. She also drank a lot of alcohol, like very heavy rum. But she never seemed to be drunk. Then she started to talk. My God, it was a goddamn man voice. I was sure at the moment that she was faking it, like imitating a male voice, but when she started to climb a tree, I almost shat my pants. When she began the ritual, she could barely walk. Now she was in a mango tree at maybe 3 meters from the ground at least. After drinking something like half a liter of heavy rum. I didn't mention that she was speaking fucking English. In a remote village where there isn't even a school, she was able to speak English. My mom told me that it was the spirit of a British sailor from the 18th century that was summoned. In 2019, there was another case in the capital. That's in Antananarivo. It's involving a family member, but I didn't want to attend it. I'm afraid of all that stuff now that I have kids. I don't know why. I'm afraid for my kids too. My boys met my grandfather. Currently, my boys are 8 and 6. At the time, they were like 4 and 2. We'd been living in a place for about 5 or 6 months, and my oldest, who wasn't firing on all cylinders, to be honest, kept walking to the corner, looking up and then talking. Still doing a lot of babbling until he was almost 6. Then after a few times he walked over, grabbed his brother by the hand, and walked him to the corner. He also looked up and started talking. They were both smiling and giggling like an adult was interacting with them. After my youngest's third trip over, I just asked, "What in the world are you two doing?" Thinking it was some kind of game. The oldest giggled and said, "I'm talking to Grandpa." Confused, like, "Baby, your grandpa lives in Nebraska. He's very far away." Talking and pointing, and he's laughing in the corner. He's like laughing. "No, Mommy," points at me, "is your grandpa." As I said, my oldest was still doing a lot of babbling, so for him to suddenly speak so clearly and in complete coherent thought was very unnerving. I look at the corner. Both boys are talking and just like showing toys up to the corner. Watch for a few minutes, like minutes, and this happened over a grand total of about 30 minutes. "Babies, come watch your movie so Mommy can fix dinner," because little ones have zero logic. They waddle over and sit back down, and they pick up the toys that have pretty much accumulated in the corner, and holy shit, put them away. Then went and sat next to his brother. They start dinner, and I keep looking at the corner. Shot in the dark, "Thanks, Grandpa." The door in the corner fell open like somebody walked through it, and there was a heightened feeling in the room afterwards. That night I had a dream of my childhood home, and on the path back to the woods there was a small building. Granite, like a mausoleum, but was more like, well, more than an awning, like one wall that held a door, 4 pillars, and a bench swing. I walked to it and lit the incense and sat on the swing, started rocking and staring at the ground. Then there they were, those old ratty sneakers. My grandpa was sitting next to me with that smile. Sitting on the swing, I just started talking, mostly about the boys. Told him I missed him so much and that I named my oldest after him, and he sat and listened with that smile on his face. After a while, we both stood up. I hugged him, told him that I hadn't told him everything yet. And then my name's called from, like, elsewhere, and I look around, don't see anyone. Look back, and he's gone. Yanked the door open and went to this vehicle shaft, like endless in both directions, completely lined with doors. I woke up crying in, like, mid-panic attack. My grandfather died somewhere along 04 or 05. My grandmother in 08. My son was born in 2010, just 1 week shy of my grandfather's birthday, which happened to be the day my doctor scheduled me to originally be induced. Phantom Vase. My ex and I were managing and maintaining an old apartment building. Tenant in Unit 16 gets tossed. We go to prep for showings. We're tearing up carpet, paint, epoxy the tub, paint, garbage, etc. I come across this vase sitting by the support beam. Nothing wrong with it, and too nice to throw out. Decorated with little roses and cherubs. What should I do with this vase? I don't see a reason to toss it. The one sitting on the floor, put it back in the kitchen where I left it. Odd statement, but my ex has a funny way of processing information, so I put it back on the kitchen and worked for a couple more hours. Took all the tools and cleaning supplies with us. Left the vase in the kitchen. Locked the door, went home for the night, which was 2 floors down. Come back the next day to finish up final touch-ups. The vase is back in the floor. Double-checked the key ring, we both had the set, and the tenant surrendered, and picked it up, put it back in the kitchen, and press on. Changed the lock, new doorknob, new deadbolt, new keys. A week or so later, also new tenant takes the place. Vase is nowhere to be found during the walkthrough. Sign the lease, give him the keys, and press on. 3 days after moving in, tenant knocks on our door. "Can I get a new lock for my door?" He just replaced it. It is a new lock. "Everything okay?" "I think somebody's been in my place, but nothing's been taken. Thanks." Next day, tenant comes home, new lock gets installed in front of him so he knows there's nothing sketchy. Lock works, everyone's happy. I started hanging out with the tenant because everybody else in the area sucked. If you ever lived in the historic district of Elgin, Illinois, you know exactly what I mean. Drop my ass on the couch, and what do I see sitting by the TV? That vase. So what made you think someone had been in here? When you asked for a new lock, if something was taken? That vase, I came home and it was sitting right here on my coffee table. So a year or so passes. I'm decent friends with guy number 16. Always keeps the door locked even when he's home. Video games, nerd shit, music, people, etc. I've seen some shit in this building and I'm comfortable enough to ask if he's seen anything other than the vase, which was still by the TV. He tells me about a woman in white, and how he's been, paced in the hallway and climbing the stairs, and children's voices in the kitchen in cold spots. And that shit right there's driving me nuts. Lock that door right behind you, knob and bolt. The door just opened. Sure enough, the door was halfway open. He goes on about the door opening itself after he's locked it. I've even seen this door just click and fall open after I've locked it. Happened in front of a lot of people. He frequently had guests and said that he came home a few times to find his door just sitting open. I don't know if you've ever had to deal with tenants, but they get jumpy when they find their doors open and, pretty instant distrust of maintenance. Understandably. So I took the master key off the main keyring and kept it with me at all times. Shit still happened. After a while, it started to escalate. Things were moved, things were missing. Home started getting really nervous. So I started doing my own rounds and walkthroughs. Made sure his doors closed and locked. Never found it open or unlocked without an explanation. And at this point, when we were hanging out, the door would unlock, open, and then sometimes would either fall off the wall or off the shelf right there in front of everyone. He was there for maybe 2 years before he was happy to hand his keys over. I asked what he did with the vase, and he said he left it in the kitchen. I'm not about to fuck with it. Did a walkthrough the next day, and it was sitting by beam. I have some more stories of this building, and I'll post them eventually. An extra roommate. Saturday morning. My friend leaves for work and I go take a shower. I don't close the curtain all the way, I just keep seeing a dark-haired woman peeking past. Saturday, midday. I'm alone in the apartment and I keep hearing the door, like someone struggling against the chain. I can hear footsteps in the hallway and in the kitchen. Saturday night. We're laying in bed heavily asleep. I hear the bedroom door shut and I see a shadow on the floor and the gap underneath. Footsteps go down the hall. Dishes shift and rattle in the sink. Steps move out to the living room and stop right by the front door, which is locked via doorknob and chain. Sunday. My friend D tells me randomly about this little statue that was given to his roommate M by a witch. That something is attached to it. Other people in the building have spoken of a woman that they've seen, and this sourceless, noiseless sound. He says M wants to throw it out, having some experience in these matters. I advised against it. Tuesday midday. I just cannot stay awake for anything. I've had a nightmare, and D, M, and I are in the kitchen discussing the statue. I excuse myself to shower. I close the door, turn the water on, undress, open the curtain to find the water off, and the shower hadn't turned. I correct it, hear the door behind me. Press the door closed again, and I catch a sight of the mirror. A lock of hair is standing up. Watch in the mirror as it keeps lifting and falling like someone's playing with it. Call out to D, and suddenly I'm slammed in the shower. I wake up as I scream for D, and I'm alone in the apartment. When D came home from work, I told him about the nightmare. Didn't really go into detail. Said he was going to smash it and went towards it. I protested and he didn't argue. This evening I took some photos of the statue. I don't know what I was expecting, but in the photos I took I noticed a change in the school picture that was sitting by the statue. The hairline on the child was different in the two photos I took. They were perhaps around 3 seconds apart from the same place and position. Just to make sure I wasn't seeing things, I sent the photo to a few friends with no context other than find the difference. While I've had several experiences with paranormal, I've never had nightmares in tandem with them. And the presence feels heavy in a sense. Like, when someone's really mad at you and they come into the same room but they don't say anything to you actively and they kind of avoid eye contact? Feels like that. nor have I had something like this happen with pictures. I know some of this sounds horrendously cliche, but it's true. Any input one has is appreciated. More Everett Building spookies. So a year ago, I started posting about an apartment building I used to help manage. A few people wanted more, but life was getting in the way, and a few small bits that happened in the building. They're as follows. My boys were 2 and 4 at that time. My oldest was and is a runner. If he wanted to go, there's little that could be done to stop him. So he was frequently dipping out of the door and running through the building. I was looking for CC as he'd been quiet for far too long and wasn't answering me. And on this particular day, my ex-D had just stepped in our apartment to ask me about some work I had done that night before in the empty unit. He was standing in the doorways, and I watched the little boy dart behind him and up the stairs. Thump, 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 thump. God damn it. I pushed past D, and as the steps continue around the landing and up the next flight, I got halfway up the bottom set, and D stops me. What are you doing? Did you not just see CC run up the stairs? The stairs were less than 2 feet from her door. Both boys are right here. They poked their heads around the doorframe. They just came out from under the couch. Then who just ran up the stairs? Could have swore he just ran out from the back room past you and all the way up the stairs. Well, it wasn't CC. What he looked like. He looked exactly like CC, like yay tall, blonde hair, and he was wearing brown. Make note of CC wearing blue. So, you see him too. End of that conversation. I don't know how many times I killed myself running up 3 flights of stairs chasing that little boy thinking my son had slipped out. We had the only kid in the building. Couldn't be a neighborhood kid, you need keys to get in. And D sometimes later informed me that when he'd be working at the night in the unit, or on days when all the tenants were out, he would hear giggling and the doors would close. His tools and keys would be moved if he left the room. Word in the neighborhood was that the building was once an orphanage belonging to the church next door. Being a softy for kids, D would ask that his tools and keys please be put back, and he'd leave the room. Find something to do for a few minutes and he'd come back and his stuff had been returned. A 400-year-old school urban legend. In 2009, I studied in a Catholic school known to be so old that it had its own urban legends and ghost stories. So one day after PE class, I needed to go pee, but the nearest ladies' room for the soccer field was occupied with people changing into PE uniforms. So I had to run to the main building and look there. Our school was quite conservative, so we didn't have locker rooms and people changed clothes using cubicles. Now, the main building is the oldest structure in the campus. It's actually a building surrounding another building, so the layout's quite confusing. Ran around the ground floor until I found a small ladies' room. There were 2 cubicles only and a small mirror, and a sink by the wall. There was the smallest public ladies' room I've ever been in, but not the time for me to be choosy, as all I needed to do was really to pee. Once I'm done, I went out the cubicle and was surprised to see 2 nuns standing by the mirror. Not really a big deal for me, as it was a Catholic school, and there are priests and nuns everywhere. But it was just quiet, so I didn't really think there'd be anybody else around. Now these 2 nuns looked also quite surprised to see me, so I just excused and squeezed myself between them and washed my hands. I then bowed to them and left. I'm not comfortable in this small room, and the silence isn't helping either. As I was browsing urban legends, I remembered an urban legend in that school. The first one is about a ladies' room in the main building where people inside cubicles used to see rotting feet hanging from the ceiling, as if somebody had hanged themselves there. The second is about a ghost nun who would show itself in the ladies' room. If you see this nun and you started to pray, this nun will imitate you and say the prayer word for word in your face. So now looking back, I was actually wondering why the nuns are surprised to see me. How the hell did I not hear them go inside or even move inside that small room? I'm just thankful they looked human. They might really be human. I might be scaring myself now. What an evil entity looks like. Discussion. I've always been enthusiastic about the paranormal, because I like the mystery behind unexplainable things. Maybe also partly because I haven't actually seen a ghost, so I'm not scared. Now, since I'm curious, I asked my younger cousin to see if I've ever seen a demon or something like that. This cousin of mine has been telling his parents that he can see people who aren't there since he was young. So we actually started to believe him when he ran out of their house naked and frantic and into my other aunt's house because he saw what looked like a woman's figure. Though there is no face, that was by the bathroom window. So back to my question on what demons look like. My cousin said that he has no idea what a demon looks like, although he saw a dark presence that, to him, was closest to one. He was about 12 at the time, playing hide-and-seek in their school grounds just before sunset. School was just literally a few steps behind their house, so he's allowed to play there. He was hiding behind a tree when he saw this dark presence. To him, it was the darkest void he'd ever saw. If anything could be blacker than black, he said that was it. He said it has no face, no discernible shape or body part. It was just a mass of blackness. It wasn't moving, but when my cousin saw it, he froze from fear. Actually admitted that he wanted to cry on the spot. He said it gave off a very bad feeling and he felt as if his life was in danger. He couldn't move or run. He only came back to his senses when a playmate tapped him. He ran home as fast as he could. Since that day, he never played by the school grounds after class again, as the school is also known for all sorts of paranormal activities. Even my aunt who teaches affirmed to this. Pag. The sun's setting now and most family and friends have left. But here I am staring at freshly dumped dirt, stopping myself from hugging the ground, wishing for the earth to gobble me up so I can be forever with him. Yes, him, Chen, my best friend, my first crush, my first boyfriend, and now my very first heartache. It's only our consolation that he passed away in his sleep. So at least there's no pain. He's gone and I can't make myself leave his grave. I can't admit to myself that I'll never see him again. If I do, well, here I stand. Hey. My grandmother came up to me and held my arm. We're going home now. You can stay if you want, just don't forget to buy me some ointment on your way home. Then she hugged me and left with my parents. Just don't forget to buy me some ointment on your way home. Grandma knows so well that I don't believe in superstitions, so she suddenly asked me to buy her some ointment so I don't go straight home from the funeral. Just don't forget to buy me some ointment on your way home. But somehow those words felt like a suggestion to me, and as the superstition goes, if you come from a wake or a funeral, don't go straight home or else the soul of the deceased will follow you. It's called pag on her native tongue, which loosely translates to shaking off, as in literally shaking off bad juju somewhere else before heading home. But what is there to lose in this scenario? It's a superstition, so more or less it's unreal. If it's real, then I get more time to be with him. I then found my courage and walked to the path at the cemetery and stared at my phone. I was contemplating where to put my Uber destination at. Home or just some convenience store or pharmacy. Grandma will surely nag me over and do some nasty rituals if I don't have her ointment. So I decided to put the convenience store as my destination. My Uber arrived shortly, and before I can breathe, Chen's like flashing through my eyes. We arrived at the store. Outside I met Dave. That's Chen's third-grade cousin. He had come to the funeral and went to the same convenience store with his family to do their pag, or pag. Excuse me. As soon as I got the ointment, I bid my goodbye to Dave, and I don't really want to converse with anyone else. I don't want to share the pain and sadness, the loss of it all. I arrived home with Grandma sitting on her favorite chair on her porch. Saw her smile when I gave her the ointment. I then went to my room, changed my clothes, went to sleep, alternating between tears and ugly sobbing, hoping I'll dream of Chen one more time. I woke up to the sound of a pebble hitting my window. My eyes were swollen from crying, and I was sleeping. I decided not to wake up until something dawned on me. It's Chen. It's how he sneaks up to my room back in the day. Like, first he'd throw stones at my window, wake me up, and then he'd climb up and sneak through my window to get to my room. I'm both excited and scared as I got up and walked toward the window. I looked down as my room's on the second floor, but no one's there. I opened the window and waited, but nothing came through. Kept the window open that night. The next morning I have like a hammering headache and puffy eyes. We got sunny side up eggs and bacon for breakfast. And for some reason I can't taste a thing, so I went looking for salt. If you're looking for salt, go ask Mama, my mother said, pertaining to my grandmother. But before I could ask why, I saw Grandma by the window hugging a small sack and pouring salt around the house. What was that for? I asked Mother, and I'm honestly thinking that Grandma's going nuts. Last night she said she heard a rustling outside her window, and the crickets went silent. And she's basically sure there was a spirit looking outside her house. She said that she cursed the spirit and threw salt out her window for it to go away, and it did. Then the crickets were chirping again. There's a spirit lurking outside her house. So the superstition must be true then. Chen might have really come home with me, but why? Because I didn't go inside the convenience store? Dave was there, so I asked him to buy the ointment for me. That was while I waited in the road and went straight home after the funeral. Went to school like nothing happened. When I came home later that day, I still saw the solid path of salt that Grandma laid. Went around the house and smudged off the portion of salt path right below my window, so that Chen could find his way to me. Luckily, Grandma didn't notice, and I happily waited for Chen to come. As expected, I was awoken by pebbles hitting my window. I ran and opened it and felt wind rush through my room. If I could embrace the wind, I would. I know it was Chen. Is everything all right, Cynthia? I heard Grandma knock and call from the other side of my door, to which I replied, yeah, it's just the wind. I then heard my closet doors open and close, and I laughed, as this is really how Chen was when he sneaks. He'd go into my closet, and when someone's about to go into my room, he'd stay there until we're clear. But today I'm feeling better than ever, and my heart's warm knowing Chen's here. As I lay in bed, I felt the mattress shift, as if someone's crawling on it. My cheeks felt so warm, and the warmth stretched to my neck, but now it felt like burning. I'm being choked by this burning sensation, and I can't get it off. I'm struggling and writhing my arms around, and there's nothing I could hold on to. I can no longer breathe, and my eyes are about to close. I caught a glimpse of what was above me. A burnt lady with charcoal-colored hair. Her eyes were bloodshot red, and her hands and arms were like charcoal still in flame, burning and choking me. I came to my senses, grasping for breath, and Grandma and my parents were around me, shaking me to come back to life. They said I was wailing and struggling, but I wouldn't wake up, and from time to time I was scratching my neck as if removing something. I met Dave earlier today, and he said he brought the ointment for you, Grandma finally told me as I calmed down. Do you know why we perform Pog Pog? Touched my neck trying to remember what I saw, and it wasn't Chen. It's because we don't know whose soul will come home with us. I thought I brought home my deceased boyfriend's soul. I didn't. My boyfriend passed away and I did a stupid thing. Now, maybe something else came home with me, but I watched my grandma do her own cleansing of the house. She has this small but deep iron pan that she fills with burning charcoal, and she puts yellow and white crystals on top of the coal to burn with it. The intention was to fill the whole house with smoke and hope to purge out the bad spirit. Luop is what she calls it. Very much like fumigation, and the smoke smells calming, and kind of oddly enough, it doesn't hurt my eyes. This doesn't really bother me. Looking back, it was selfish of me to want to bring Chen home with me, since that means that he won't get eternal rest or won't get, reincarnated. The next morning, I asked Grandma to come with me and to apologize to Chen's family about my mistake. I moved to give me peace and show my penance. Fortunately, they understood what I did, as we all call Miss Chen, and told me I'd been forgiven. We were about to go home when Aunt Nana, Chen's mother, pulled me by my right shoulder and stared at my neck. Those marks, Aunt Nana said. Chen has those marks too. She was talking about the burnt, choking marks on my neck. Chen was holding his neck when he saw him lifeless. A lot of things rushed into my mind while Grandma just talked to Aunt Nana to calm her down. What if Chen didn't die peacefully in his sleep? What if whatever I saw last night killed him? Like how it attempted to do to me. This thing caught him. Will he ever find peace? Who is this burnt lady? What does she want with us? Before we left Chen's house, Grandma performed her Waptu, and Aunt Nana burned some incense at Chen's peace. She also created a salt path around the house for added peace of mind. "Grandma?" I called while walking on our way home. "Yes?" "If whatever choked me down last night killed Chen, what will happen to him? What will happen to me?" I asked and stopped in my tracks with all the superstitions and rituals that she knows and follows. She must know something for this. She sighed and looked back to me in her sincerest way. "There are some things we can counter and some things that we should not meddle with." She held my hand and pulled me so we could start walking again. "We can counter whatever's on you right now. We can do all the rituals that we have and hope it goes away." Then she stopped. She didn't face me. Her eyes remained focused on the clouds. She gripped my hand tightly while saying, "As for Chen's soul, we should not meddle. We can pray for him, burn incense, appease the gods and all, but we should never meddle with life and death." I skipped school today and followed every single ritual that Grandma asked me to do. I bathed in salted water. I helped her lay in the salt path around her house. We even put salt lines by her windowsill. She still did her pag-lu-lu-up again, but that was sundown. She gave me a rosary and put underneath my pillow too. Grandma's a Catholic, but her father, bless his soul, was a shaman. So she inherited his book of healing and rituals with his passing. It's a weird mix of strict religion and traditional wisdom, but if it works, it works. That night I left my lights on. I even drank a cup of salted water. My kidney fails, at least my soul might still be saved. I couldn't sleep, so I stayed up and browsed Instagram. But it aches to see goodbye posts and memories for Chen by our mutual friends, so I stayed off and went to my room just to have a midnight snack. By the kitchen counter I saw Grandma's iron pan, and beside it the jar full of crystals and the book of rituals. I grabbed the book, browsed it, and saw that it's both in Tagalog and in Latin. The first few pages were about herbs, what they cure and when and where to find them. Then the rituals to diagnose whatever spirit or entity attached itself to a person or a thing. The rituals to purge and the rituals to communicate. The rituals to communicate. If it's in a ritual book and the rules are laid out pretty strictly, then maybe it's safe to follow. Maybe if I can communicate with Chen to know how he's doing. Reading the instructions and other notes, the ritual includes what looks like astral projection, meaning my soul would need to leave my body, so I could go where the dearly departed are. All in all, what I only needed was an item that belongs to whoever I want to contact, and in this case Chen, and a few phrases that will put the projection in action. If I want to get back to my body, I just simply touch it. Fair enough, easy enough. Now, what I only need is an item of his, and it'll be easy since I volunteered to help Aunt Nana store away Chen's belongings tomorrow. So I took a picture of the ritual page just in case Grandma hides the book tomorrow, and I went to my room to try to get some sleep. Morning came and I went to school, and that afternoon I went straight to Chen's house to help Aunt Nana store Chen's items. I managed to take home with me Chen's favorite black and gray t-shirt. I just waited for everybody in the house to sleep to perform the ritual. I also know that I'd be safe since I helped Grandma with the salt path and the salt line by her windowsills. I even drank the salt water. I promised myself that this is the last thing I would do for Chen, but I'll only do this to know if he's well in the afterlife. 2 a.m. came and I knew it was time. I wore Chen's shirt and chanted the required phrases. Slowly I felt my soul being ripped from my body, as if I was riding a Viking's boat, my body being ripped into two from like push and pull motions. Burns. Somehow my soul was being thrown from my body, as if being kicked out and expelled from a door. I looked back and I only looked like asleep. So I proceeded to do my original plan. I must look for Chen. I went out of my bedroom and was immediately attracted to the smell of the incense that we burnt earlier in the day. I was kind of dizzy walking inside her house, as if nothing was really solid in the spirit world but for all this mist and lights. Finally managed to get out of her house. I saw the salt path that we had made. In the spirit world, salt was glowing like polished gold. It felt so warm and inviting. The salt path was no longer a path, though. From where the path was, the shimmering thin boundary rose, and maybe this is what prevented any bad spirit from coming through. I walked through without a problem. I only felt kind of fuzzy and a really warm feeling all over me. Now that I'm out, I just realized that here in the spirit world, it's odd, but there seems to be no time. It's not day nor night, and there's no souls wearing old clothes, and there's those wearing what looks like stuff from present time, all just wandering around, as if not noticing each other. If Chen's soul is wandering, where would he be? Would he still be by the cemetery? Would he be by his house, where he passed away? I was still lost in my thoughts, and I saw Chen walking past me. I was almost shocked that I froze in my place, and I barely managed to snap out of my senses to follow him. He's in his school uniform. He seems to be walking home. If souls could shed a tear, I'd be crying a river, since my heart's pouring out from cherishing this moment that Chen just looks alive and well. He went home into his room, laid down as if getting ready to sleep. When it looked as if he was asleep, I went closer to touch his cheek. He then opened his eyes, looked straight at me as if it was like in a dreamlike state, and he smiled, and I hugged him. "How are you? Are you well? I hope you find peace." That's what I said as I hugged him and cried in his chest. I shed no tears. I know that, but crying my heart out. I'm just so happy to be with him. Next thing I knew, he was struggling as if trying to push me away from him. "Chen, what are you doing? It's me. Calm down." He must have been re-experiencing his death. He might be in the unending loop of his last moments of his life. Tried to calm him down, tried to hold him, but he wouldn't calm down. "Chen, it's okay, it's over, you can rest in peace now." Kept on saying this while holding his face with my hands, trying to call him back to his senses. "Mom!" he screamed with horror in his eyes. "Chen, look at me," I begged. When he managed to look at me, I was horrified with what I saw in his eyes. Burnt skin and bloodshot eyes, but it's me. I'm the one with him now, not her. I was so lost in thought that I didn't really notice Chen stop struggling. My hands were in his face, and they were now by his neck. My fair hands are now burning black and red like charcoal. I lifted my hands, and burning marks appeared in his neck along with the bruises. Then and there, Aunt Nana entered his room, the most horrifying scream I've ever heard. As I looked back at Chen, I realized he was not reliving his death. This exact moment was his death. I don't know what was happening, but I truly hope that this was all just a dream. Ran downstairs, saw Grandma just performing her whoop in Chen's house. That means that everything is happening simultaneously. There is no time. As the whoop smoke reached me, I feel my eyes becoming warm. But I was not affected painfully, so I thought it was all fine. That was until I faced a mirror. With each smoke that passed through me, my eyes spill blood, my skin rupture with fire, but I still feel only warmth. But there is a salt barrier around Chen's house. But what's the use of anything? I ran through it and felt for the first time pain, as if I was being stabbed by 1,000 flaming needles per inch of my body. Chen's black and gray shirt was now as dark as charcoal. If material things could burn in the spirit world, it would burn with me. I came back to our house with every intent to go back to my body. I saw the salt barrier again. I tried to run through it, but my face and arms burned so hard that I fell back in the bush behind our house. Grandma looked out her window and she threw salt in my direction. This was that night of the funeral. It all dawned on me now. If my soul has layers, and it would peel and burn one by one, starting from the salted water inside my body from the salt bath, from the rituals inside our houses, and eventually there'll come a time when only one layer will be left, and I'll have no soul left to spare. I was losing hope. That's when I saw myself inside my bedroom walking around sobbing. For sure it was another time, like I threw pebbles at my window. Myself opened it like clockwork, but I can't pass the salt barrier without turning myself to ashes this time around. Like watching a stage play, I saw myself walking and breaking the salt path, to which I rushed and climbed up to my window. I saw myself standing by the window, and I know this nightmare will end soon if I can just touch my body. But myself rushed toward the door, hearing Grandma knock on it. With all the strength that I have, I ran into the window but stumbled. Needed to grab the closet door just to stand up. My soul was definitely drying up. As I was able to stand up, I climbed up the bed, saw myself touch my face, but nothing happened. Can't come back. Touched my face again, and then my neck, my head, but nothing's happening. In my panic, I tried to shake my other self, but I can't come through. I saw myself struggling and realizing that this was the first moment when I saw the burnt lady. Myself and I met eye to eye, and I saw the horror in her eyes. I am in pain, I am in rage. I am turning to ashes, and I cannot come back. Is it the salt bath? Is it the salted water that I took? Swoosh. Grandma came in and threw salt at me. I almost thought that my soul was going to turn to ash, and luckily it didn't. I managed to hide underneath my bed. I heard my family try to wake my other self up, and everything went back like clockwork. I hid until, like, the exact moment that I left my body, and with what was left in my soul, I tried so hard to come back to an empty body in my bed. I was crawling from under my bed, and I touched my foot, and I was able to return to my body. But it feels different now. It feels like my burnt soul fits loosely within my body, and I find it hard to move. I can't feel my arms and hands, and I can't move a muscle on my face, and I screamed with my throat, and I realized I still can't move my legs. I struggled to get up. I hit the door with my body, so it made a sound. Fortunately, my grandpa's a light sleeper, so she came rushing to my room. She stared at me, and her face looked like she knew what had happened. She yelled for my parents, and I saw them coming before losing consciousness. About 6 months had passed since everything happened. It took a lot of physical therapy sessions before I could properly move my hands and arms again. The face looks as if I suffered a stroke. And a stroke is also what had made my parents believe to have, be the thing that actually happened. But only Grandma and I knew what really happened that night. I dare not touch the book of rituals again. Typing this the first time I got control of my finger muscles, so as to warn other people not to follow what I've done. In my most desperate moment, I thought I was helping a loved one, but it turned out I caused his demise. I understood now what Grandma said. We should never meddle with life and death. My one and only extremely odd experience. I don't think I'll ever know what the hell I saw. Just not sure what happened. I just want to explain first that I'm somebody that likes to be scared. I enjoy going to abandoned buildings and homes. I like the feeling of walking into pitch black rooms. Not being able to see anything in front of you is just a good adrenaline feeling for me. Just trying to explain that, I don't really feel dark or like pushing my mental boundaries. But anyway, this happened a year or so back when I was renting a suite that was on a very large property. All flat farming fields with nothing growing on them across from my front door. I was on the side of this massive house, and it was a big barn. The barn had floodlights on the top that would go off, and anything went in front of it, like motion sensor, would light up the space between my door and the barn. Anyway, I was out there smoking a joint, and all of a sudden I would see something moving toward me from the field toward the middle part of the barn in my place. I couldn't see anything, just the movement of it. That was until it came to the moonlight. I'm unsure exactly how to explain it, but this is my best try. It's like a ball of black with almost tentacles or wavy arms coming off of it. And I, at this point, still can't really see. It's almost like it was darker than actual darkness. That made it somewhat more visible against the barn behind it. I remember kind of getting down on one knee, kind of like a hunter's stance to try to see it better. Kind of got shocked on what I was seeing, like all of a sudden, back a bit farther from the field, very small in size, but a very super bright light shined in my face. It wasn't like blinding at all, it was more legit like a small little mag flashlight. As soon as it hit me, I just tossed my joint, hopped in my door, and locked it behind me. Went to my room that faced the direction, grabbed my gun, and looked out the window. Super weird. All those balls of black masses were messed up by themselves. But then it was like a human shined a light in my face. It was a super odd experience. Can't argue with you there. Angel or a stalker ghost? This is a story I heard from my cousin. I also overheard some of the details. I'll tell what I personally heard and what was told to me. So we live in Pune City in India. The area we live in is, well, not at all haunted, nor does it feel spooky. My cousin worked in an IT firm almost 20 kilometers away from his house, so we took the bus or a cab. I was 14 at that time, and I was visiting him and my other cousin for the weekend. So this is the part I was told by him 2 weeks ago. Almost 6 years had passed, and I still find it creepy. It was raining heavily that night, and it was almost midnight. He left his office on time, but was caught in heavy rains. No cab was in sight. Fortunately, he got on a bus which dropped him almost a kilometer near his house. He decided that as he's already wet from the rain, he'll just walk home. Just at that time, an auto rickshaw stopped by and offered help. He agreed, and just as he got inside, another man came to the rickshaw requesting help. My cousin said the other person was very old, wearing a village turban over his head. Most likely in his 80s, so the old guy wanted to go, and, well, the rickshaw driver is really a good-hearted person. He agreed to help both of them. He dropped my brother off first near a colony, then went away with the old guy. Now, there was a 5-minute walk from where my cousin dropped off, and no other vehicle other than a bike could actually travel on the narrow path my cousin was walking. He reached the staircase of our building and saw the same old man sitting on the opposite staircase. His eyes were fixated on him and spoke monotonously to my cousin, just making sure you reached home safely. My brother panicked and ran up the stairs and banged on our door. As soon as we opened it, he yelled up at us and told us to come here. He wanted to come here and pray with him. We were all confused, but did as he said. After a while, he was telling our aunt all about this encounter. He was sweating profusely. I overheard something about a man following him, but I didn't give it much thought at the time. 2 weeks ago, he told me about this when he was once again talking to my aunt and sweating heavily. He said he saw the same old man in the same outfit outside his office building. Till today, we didn't find out who or what that old guy was. I have tons of paranormal encounter stories, and I have myself experienced some of them. Three bald kids. About 2 years back, I've experienced something that gives me the chills to this day whenever I think about it. I had to submit a short film for my exam. We were short on time, so we had to shoot during our EID holidays. It was the last day of our holidays and our last shoot day as well. We went to our location, which was actually my friend's house. We had to set up our scene at rooftop. Since we were really rookie, there was no real big crew, a lot of lights and stuff, just a few friends trying to get their work done. When we got there, it was after 12 at night. We were setting up our stuff. Our friend whose place it was wasn't with us. Kept checking on batteries and cards and stuff beforehand. So the shoot, But when we turned on our cameras, both of them ran out of batteries. It was very strange. However, nobody said anything. We put them on charge since we had some to spare. After a while, when the batteries were just enough to work with, we set up our scene. The terrace that we had, or that we were on rather, was merely 2 feet distance from the terrace of the house beside it. One wall of that place was completely covered with dense plants and leaves. When we started shooting our scene, we noticed that after a while that 3 kids are standing on that terrace. They're watching us. Nothing was unusual for us, since people do notice you when you're taking out cameras. We got busy with our work, and then I looked at my left to see if those kids were still there, like a subconscious action. They weren't there, got busy to work again. When we were done with our shoot, it was like maybe 2:30 a.m. Those kids were there again. Their formation was a girl about 8 or 9 on the right, a boy about 6 or 7 in the middle, and a boy like 3 or 4 on the left. All 3 of them were bald. One of my friends got suspicious and asked the kids, "Hey kids, where are your parents?" The middle one replied, "I don't know, maybe they're having dinner." My friend called me to come closer. showed me their house and asked me, "Are you having a fucking candlelight dinner at this hour? Why the hell is it completely dark?" I got a bit nervous. Another friend of mine asked them, "Where'd you come from?" The girl replied with a word that's so rare in our language that only two of my friends knew the meaning. What she said meant, "We are prisoners." We didn't know at that moment what the hell did it mean, but all our friend did was tell us not to communicate with those kids anymore. So we went down, called her friend, said that we're free now, should open the garage so we can take our cars out. When he came, we asked him, "Who are those kids?" He said, "What kids? No one lives in that house." I was really nervous, so I shouted, "Dude, that's not funny at all." He got kind of angry and said, "Come." That house had 2 gates. He showed us both and said, "Look at that." I can't put into words what kind of spine-chilling feeling I had right at that moment when I saw those giant padlocks. Then he told us there used to be a mental asylum, like an NGO type, in this very house many, many years ago. That was the last time I went there. And hopefully not the last time you hear from me. See ya.